of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry approve the following donations for 2022. St. Lawrence River Institute, $10,000. County Fairs, $9,000. Royal Canadian Legion, $940. Mobile Crisis Response Team, $120,000. Eastern Ontario Agri-Food Network, $25,000. Habitat for Humanity, $1,000. Ronald McDonald House, $50,000. Miscellaneous donations, $1,000. And the Police Services Board Community Initiatives. This is a motion that comes forward in conjunction with the formal approval of the agenda every year, and it's of the budget, and it's required by our auditors. It's just a confirmation of Council's desire in the context of approving those donations. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, Madam Warden, if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the donations? Yes, Councillor Landry.
Just a question. So, thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to the county fairs, just how many fairs or what's the take for each individual fairs? What's the number?
Thank you, Councillor Landry. Yes, that $9,000 split equally among our, I believe they get $1,500 each per year. It's just something that's has happened every year for many years to support them.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor of the motion then? Thank you very much. It's carried. Stephanie, you can hear us, and Kimberly? Okay, so is Kimberly Kimberly, will you take over the as clerk now?
If you'd like me to, Madam Warden, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine, unless you'd like to carry on, Tim.
It's up to Kimberly. If she's ready to carry on, she certainly can, or I can, so that's fine, either way.
Okay, so you can carry on then, Kimberly, and welcome to the public. We are now live. We apologies to the public. We were delayed because we had technical difficulties. Okay, on to 6.2, Financial Services, 2021 Reserve Transactions. Madam Clerk, a resolution, please.
It's moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Smith, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry approve the 2021 reserve transactions up to the following amounts. $250,000 be allocated to the Regional Incentive Program Reserve. $1,249,686 be allocated to the Bridge Reserve. $45,000 be allocated to the Roads Resurfacing Reserve. $85,000 be allocated to the Roads Equipment Reserve. $747,346 be allocated to the Roads Project Reserve. $116,190 be allocated to the Roads Building Reserve. $2,076,560 be allocated to the Now Needs Road Reserve, and $1,104,692 be allocated to the COVID-19 Reserve. Any accumulated general surplus as at December 31st, 2021 will be allocated to the working reserve.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can everybody, I'll ask you to go in just a second. Can everybody hear? Okay, yes? Okay. All right, go ahead, Rebecca.
Good morning, Council. So each year we're required to pass a resolution from Council directing how the surplus and deficits of the year will be addressed. So the resolution often includes reserve transactions from the year in order to complete projects or work in progress, things like that. So for Council's benefit, I just wanted to address a few of the reserves in a bit of detail. The $250,000 that is allocated to the Regional Incentive Reserve, this is relating to projects that were awarded in 2021 but have yet to be completed. So those regional incentives have a time frame for which to complete. So that will be paid out in 2022. The Roads Resurfacing Reserve, the $45,000, that's relating to the Martintown project. $85,000 for the Roads Equipment Reserve. This is related to pickup trucks that were ordered in April of 2020 and still have yet to be received. So they aren't included in our 2022 budget. Therefore, we are transferring it into reserves in order to have the funds. The Roads Project Reserve, there's various projects that are still in the work in progress stage. The two largest would be County Road 22 and County Road 18. And again, the Now Needs Road Reserve, that is relating to the surplus of the roads operating and capital expenses to be transferred to the Now Needs Roads Reserve. So, and as well, the COVID-19 Reserve, funding in 2021 again relating to COVID. And as per the directive from the province, those funds have to be transferred into reserves if they're not spent. So, any questions?
Questions or comments? Councillor Byvelds, then Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Warden, and thanks, Rebecca. You answered most of my questions because was wondering the projects that we did carry forward. The bridge reserve, is that a general reserve or is that some of the leftovers from last year? Because I know some of them got really late and probably not done.
It's a combination of both. So the bridge reserve, any surplus that was in the bridges was always transferred to the general bridge reserve for the future, for future years. But mainly there are projects that are yet to be completed. The majority of that is related to those projects.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And then the last question, and this is a ballpark. Do we have a general surplus from last year, or you don't want to divulge that right now? And that's up to you. You can have the general statement, well, our auditors have to go through the books and we won't know it till then, and that's fair enough.
I don't have that number yet. Focused so much on getting the roads now needs done, so I was happy to say that took some time and a lot of communication back and forth with the county roads engineer. But I am confident that there will be a surplus for the year, but I don't have the number of what that surplus will be yet.
Councillor Armstrong, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I apologize in ahead of time. I'm sure you've probably given us this information, but is there an end date on how long we can keep the COVID money in reserve? And if there is, can you give us that date?
I'm glad you asked that question. I've had multiple questions regarding the same thing to the municipal programs, asking on various occasions what to do with the funds if they're unspent at the end of the term. And every time I get a response, it is any unspent funds need to be transferred into reserve. So going back, I asked the question specifically about what unspent funds, if they go into the reserve, what happens after that? And unfortunately, I don't get a direct answer of what happens with those funds.
Okay, Councillor Ward, and then Councillor McGillis.
Through you, Madam Chair, and just to follow up to Councillor Byveld's comments, but next Monday we're going to have a discussion in regards to the road situation, and obviously funding's a big part of that. So if you could provide some thought in the meantime as to the carryover, and also I understand Ben is working on the EDP agreement. It might have some relevance as well, but if we could have a conservative estimate, I think that it would probably allow the discussion to be a little more detailed. So just a polite request, but nothing more.
Can you clarify on what, are you talking about the Now Needs Roads Reserve or the general surplus?
No, my question is, like, there will be a carryover, I think you're politely indicating, but you don't want to give us a rough figure. And then on top of that, I understand that we're also working on the EDP agreement with the counties, and both of those funds can be reallocated, I guess is the word I'm looking for. If we had a conservative estimate, it would help the discussion next Monday. Thank you.
I'm currently working on it. I'll let Ben respond to whatever agreement that is. I'm not familiar with the EDP agreement that you're referring to, but maybe I can have Ben answer that. But for the other ones, I am actively working on it. We still have a lot of allocations to make and a lot of financial transactions to do. It'd be very premature, and I can't guarantee that I could have it for next week, but I may be able to have a generalized number, but it won't be anything firm.
Yeah, only if it's convenient through your current workload, okay? I'm not asking for anything extra here. Thank you.
Councillor McGillis?
Thank you, Warden.
Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead, and then I think Ben has a comment.
Okay, you can comment first if you want, it's regarding this issue. Sure. I was just going to clarify with the rest of council. As you may recall, we did have a road users agreement with EDP, which had to do with the wind farm built in North Stormont. So we're working through the pavement condition assessment based on the deterioration we saw. So we're in that process right now, but we have every expectation that will be done in the near future, and we'll see the results of that analysis and what that means for us. So that's about what I can share at this moment, but yeah, it is something we are working through, and we have every expectation that will be resolved. That issue will be resolved by the end of before summer is what my timeline is right now.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Councillor McGillis.
I like the Mr. part better.
Mr.?
Yeah, just one question, Kimberly, or Rebecca, sorry. If there's no place to allocate the funds here, is there any way that you can transfer the funds to municipalities in Sdng? Anybody ever inquire about that question?
So there has been some things that the Director of IT Services and myself were speaking of with regards to VADM, trying to find ways that we could, since VADM is one of the programs that we use universally amongst the local municipalities, of ways to improve VADM to make it more efficient and online and less paper, things like that, to make improvements that way. We're not able to hand out the money to local municipalities, but there are options that we can use to help local municipalities, but it's very, very limited. So we have, like for instance, we have purchased some additional VADM support to deal with some of the backlog issues that we've had, which has been offered to local municipalities if they need it. But we're also working on some online functionality with VADM that may not be available. And if it's something that we can move forward with, we intend to do that. But unfortunately, we can't just transfer funds amongst the local municipalities. I've asked the question a couple of times, and it was very clear that we weren't able to. We do have a treasurers meeting coming up, hopefully, not scheduled yet. It was rescheduled for a later date, and this is one of the topics that we're going to try and discuss of how we could use the funds that benefit all the local municipalities as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. Any other questions or comments? You've heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? None opposed? Thank you. Motion is carried. 6.3 Transportation Contract Extension Stinson Fuels, I should say. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Landry, seconded by Councillor Fraser, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry authorize a contract extension with WO Stinson & Son Limited for the supply and delivery of diesel and unleaded gasoline until May 31st, 2023, under the terms and conditions of the existing contract.
Thank you. Ben, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll relocate to the central spot here. Just very quickly, we're going through our 2022 projects over the last little bit, and realized that with this year, at the end of the year, we had a contract that was expiring with Stinson Fuel. We learned back when this contract started that the January 1st changeover date wasn't the exact best date to change over, just given we're in the middle of holidays and usually in the middle of plowing. And anyway, long story short is we felt it was a good idea to approach council with the opportunity to extend the contract until June of 2023. And that being just gives us a quicker changeover. This contract is really based on rack rates for fuel, so it's not like we're locked into a specific fuel price, rather it fluctuates based on market pricing. It is a competitive tender. Stinson won the competitive tender, so really what we're asking for is council to consider a contract extension. We've informally inquired with WO Stinson & Son, and they said they were very amenable to it. It's working very well, the relationship. South Glengarry and South Stormont are both joint tenders on this tender itself, and they were happy with that idea too, and agreed with the rationale behind why it would make some sense to extend it a little bit further. So just one of these things where we can kind of check it off our plates early in the year and not have to worry about it come September, October.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? And motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ben. I guess you're going to stay where you are because we're coming up to 7 tenders and quotations, 2022 hot mix tender. Clerk, may
Moved
I
by
have the-
Councillor McGillis. Yep. Moved by Councillor McGillis, seconded by Councillor Smith, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the joint tender from Cornwall Gravel Company Limited for hot mix paving and other related works at their unit prices totaling $5,308,465 plus HST. The joint tender includes the following: the United Counties, $4,875,585; the Township of South Stormont, $432,880, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. So this is really our, we'll call it the primary hot mix tender. What's missing from this tender is the adjacent sections of County Road 7 to the one that we discussed during the last council meeting. We felt, at a staff level, we felt, we felt very confident that the pricing we'd get for those 2 adjacent sections in our next tender, after we talk about now needs roads and bundling it in with the now needs roads, made a lot of sense, and that gave us the opportunity, if council does decide to do all of those pieces of County Road 7, then it is bundled together. So we felt that that was the right approach for how to kind of continue and move forward with our hot mix paving contract, get this out of the way and get it awarded, have a sense of where the market is right now in terms of unit rate pricing, and know where we are, and if we had a little bit of wiggle room even going into our now needs roads discussion. So I know our next action request, we're going to talk about cold in place recycling as well, which is a key part of this whole kind of big budget that we're talking about. At the end of the day, we are estimating a surplus of about $365,000 based on a combination of all the planned work for this year. So again, we're excluding the now needs roads discussion and the surpluses that are we'll be talking about next week, Monday. So it's a good news story. Unit rates were right where kind of we were budgeting them this year, a little bit. Again, good competitive pricing. We had two bidders. There was quite a variation between the two, but we're happy with both bidders, and we have no issue recommending award to the low bid, which Cornwall Gravel, we've worked with in the past. So, all in all, a good news story. So now it's all about watching the AC prices and seeing where that takes us this year.
Thank you, Ben. You got us a good number there. Questions or comments? Yes, Councillor McGillis.
Thank you, Warden. Have you contacted all the other municipal road supervisors or directors in terms of having more people or more municipalities involved in this tender so that the numbers will be lower for us?
Yeah, so right now, South Stormont was the only municipality that had their program ready to go. So South Stormont is included and does benefit from this tender. Our intention was with the Now Needs Roads tender that we're going to put out another hot mix tender based on the discussion we're going to have next week, Monday. We've had that discussion with all the local municipalities, and we are collecting that information from our other local municipalities as well, and we expect they'll benefit from it for those that want to participate. So it's a lot of times it has to do with budget process at each local municipality and when they're able to kind of get their budgets approved. So there's a little bit of a challenge, but again, having these 2 tenders really makes it a lot, I think, a lot more efficient this time around than compared to previous years. So it's a good thing.
Councillor Bivalds.
Thank you, Warden. Ben, I'm just looking at the table 2, and I don't know, I just want to clarify. So your tender 2 numbers are just basically ballparks to throw in there for County Road 7? Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because it's explained somewhat, but not quite up to where it needed to be. Okay, fair enough. Quick question, micro, is it coming out? Have you done that tender? Because that's part.
Yes, that tender is actually out right now. I'm sorry, Mike. Yeah, it is out right now.
Okay, because that's, that encompasses everything we do, so thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, you've heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Thank you. Carried. None opposed. 7.2, cold in place recycling with expanded asphalt. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Wirt, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the tender from Rodo Mill Incorporated for the Colden Place recycling with expanded asphalt and other related works on various county roads at their unit prices totaling $3,557,553.14 plus HST, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. I won't spend much time on this. It's complementary to the action request we just approved. And, you know, again, we've worked with Rotomel, very happy with the work they do, and we think this is a great process for us in rehabilitating our roadways.
Excellent. Any questions or comments? You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. On to number 8, bylaws. 8.1, 2022 tax ratios. Madam Clerk.
Bylaw number 5, it's moved by Councillor Byveld, seconded by Councillor McDonald, that bylaw number 5334, being a bylaw to establish property tax ratios for the county and municipal purposes for the year 2022, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rebecca.
So the tax ratio bylaw establishes the 2022 tax ratios, which remain unchanged from last year. So the tax ratios distribute the tax burden between property classes. So that would be relative to the residential class, which is always equal to 1. So the ratios also don't have a financial impact on local municipalities. And by changing any of the tax ratios, it doesn't change the budget. It only changes the disposition and the reallocation of the tax, general tax levy to other property classes. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Any questions? Comments? Okay, you've all heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. 8.2, 2022 tax rates. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Wirt, that bylaw number 5335, being a bylaw for the purpose of adopting and raising the general upper tier levy for the year 2022, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rebecca.
All right. As per budget deliberations, the total taxation required to support the 2022 budget is $52,262,485. The tax rate bylaw does provide an approval for the tax rates and the budget that was presented earlier this year. The budget resulted in a 1.83% tax rate increase in the county tax rates and provided an increase of almost $1.6 million in tax revenue. Local municipalities include these tax rates on their property tax bills to property owners. Any questions?
Thank you, Rebecca, for all your hard work on all of this. I know it's a lot coming up to it and then trying to finish it all off. So thank you. Comments or questions, please? Seeing none, that's how good a job you've done. All in favor of the motion? Thank you, carried. Okay. Moving on to 8.3, Municipal Modernization Funding, Public Works Permits, Integration and Modernization. Now, just want a little shout out to Ben here, who I think you did this application, correct? With the help of many other people. So this is a good news story. Between these 3 municipal modernization funding opportunities, it comes up to almost $400,000. And is it not? No? Okay, what? Oh, it's 500. Okay, I can't add. Anyway, it's a good news story. So thank you, Ben, for that. Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Through you, it's moved by Councillor Laundrie, seconded by Councillor Gardner, that bylaw number 5336, being a bylaw to authorize the transfer payment agreement between the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry and Her Majesty the Queen and Right of the Province of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
So Kimberly, you're speaking to this, or is Ben?
Through you, if Ben can speak to the actual project, if you have any questions. The bylaw is simply just to authorize the funding agreement.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you, and this is one I had reported whenever we had submitted this application. We're working with a bunch of counties, local municipalities, and separated towns on some, essentially what it is, it's a integrated permitting program. So what will happen is it'll be a one-stop shop for developers, people moving heavy loads, people that want to apply for a road cut permit. They just have to go into this interface, apply based on the geographic location, and it's going to submit the application to the right municipality. So not having to worry about, is it a county road, is it a township road, is it affecting both roadways? It's something that's going to be hopefully, hopefully changes the way we do business, and not only we being Sdng, but all municipalities in Ontario. That's ultimately where we're going with it. One of our big partners in this is the Ontario Good Roads Association, who are going to take over this project once we've kind of brought it through this pilot stage. So that's the plan. Let's hope we get there.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Landry.
Through you, Madam Chair. Ben, so this funding, is it like 2 years ago, every municipality as well, I think the upper tier, received modernization funding? Is this leftover funding now that we're utilizing, or is this a new source of funding that's coming through?
A new source. It was an application that we had to submit for this amount of money, and so it is a new source.
It's a new source. Thank you.
Councillor Wirt, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, and congratulations to Ben and your team on this, but this is just a question of my own personal interest. But in all these funding agreements, there's a liability aspect that we have to support, and I don't understand where our exposure is. Is that just standard protocol, or?
Yeah, I would say it's standard protocol. Yeah, that I wouldn't for what we're doing from a liability perspective. It's it's low risk, high reward. So I'm not. I have no kind of concerns from liability for what we're doing right now.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor of the motion? Thank you, carried. Okay, 8.4, these next two, I think, are thanks to Peter, if I'm not mistaken. Will you speak to them? Okay, Madam Clerk, go ahead with the resolution.
It's moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor McGillis, that bylaw number 5337, being a bylaw to authorize a transfer payment agreement between the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, and Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Excellent, thank you. Go ahead, Peter.
So this, we actually received 100% funding grant from the province to assist with reviewing the 6 municipal bylaws. So what the plan would be to do is to work with all your staff and councils as well, and have a report summarizing ways that the bylaws could be more efficient, maybe harmonize some definitions, allow for some other council's priorities like affordable housing, to make sure there's reduced barriers and red tape for people to move forward. And then they would go as a report to your individual local councils to decide whether you want to take action or choose from some of the recommendations. So we're happy we got 100% funding for this one, $122,000, and we're recommending council pass the bylaw.
Thank you, Peter. Another good news story here. Questions or comments from anyone? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? None opposed, it's carried. Thank you. And so 8.5, Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Byveld, seconded by Councillor Fraser, that bylaw number 5338, being a bylaw to authorize the transfer payment agreement between the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, and the Queen and Right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Thank you. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you, Warden Williams. So this is a project to do a joint subdivision and site plan manual for all the municipalities and for the counties as well. In the description, you can see there's a work plan to work closely with planners, public works consultants that represent developers as well, and then also to take the best of all your existing site plan manuals too. I know some have been more recently updated, some municipalities don't have them, some it's a bit of an older document. The idea would be to take the strengths and weaknesses from each of the documents, combined to one that can be used and updated more frequently, rather than each municipality updating every few years on its own. But as mentioned in the report too, each of the local municipalities could have their own particular, let's say, a cross-section for a road that made more sense in that municipality. So it doesn't have to be 100% approved by the county. Each municipality can have their own chapters or policies on sidewalks, things like that, if desired. So we're recommending council approve the bylaw so we can start with the project and work with your staff on this.
Very good. Another excellent project. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Thank you. Carried. None opposed? Thank you, Peter. Consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Fraser, that all items listed under the consent agenda section of the agenda be received for information purposes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Just a note that 9.4 in the consent agenda is the Service Manager Joint Liaison Committee agenda and the information that was presented at the Joint Liaison. This is the first time, to my knowledge, that information has been included in your council packages. It's excellent information, it really is, and I was glad to see it included. Are there any questions with regards to any of that? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the consent agenda? Thank you, carried. 10, boards and committees. I'll start with the Wardens Report. Not last weekend, but the weekend before, I attended the South Nation Conservation 75th celebration, at least the beginning of their celebrations, because they're going to have a year-long celebration of their 75th anniversary. And it started at Warwick Forest in North Stormont. It was a fantastic event. That's an amazing forest, that forest is. Among all of our other forests. The OGRA conference will be coming in April in person, so we're kind of hoping to be able to have some kind of warden's room there, but that is uncertain at this point in time. I'll keep you updated. And with regards to Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, we haven't had a meeting since my last update, but we will be meeting in person in Lennox and Addington in March, which is good because I haven't met any of these people in person, so I'm looking forward to meeting all of the wardens. Excuse me. Joint Liaison Committee. I think, Al, you can report on the Joint Liaison.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Warden. As you so aptly pointed out, the information was included in our agenda for the first time. I didn't see any questions when you asked it. I guess the big thing that points out to me, because it's one of the biggest accomplishments that we've arrived at, is the frustration now that the ambulance that we have ordered that would, I believe, significantly help all of our townships hasn't even been manufactured yet. And Mr. Lister did say, and we all know Bill, and he's a very optimistic human being. He said he's hoping that they begin to manufacture, and correct me if I'm wrong, in March, and that's just to manufacture. And I know that some of the problems that we've had in purchasing trucks in my own private life, and I'm sure all of you have done the same thing, that's probably wishful thinking that we will get our ambulance in March. So it could be well past this term of council, even that, not to put a negative spin on it, but that, I think, everything else was very positive, and there were a lot of good reports, but I think that's something that stands out because it significantly impacts our areas, each and every one of us. So we can just cross our fingers and hope for the best on that. If there's any other questions on the other things that you've read, I believe that the Warden and myself could answer those questions, but that's the significant one.
Okay, thank you for your report. Library Board. Councillor Fraser, do you want to take that, or pass it on if you don't?
Thank you very much, Madam Warden. Yes, I will take that, and I'm sure someone will jump in if I miss something. We had a discussion on policy development and its evaluating, we need to self-evaluate as board members and evaluate our strengths and our weaknesses in order to ensure that we go down the path that we have chosen to go down and ensure that we deliver as board members the best that we can deliver as a member of that board. And also we discussed something that needs to be discussed in many areas, a succession policy. So we're undertaking that discussion. So we can, as members, lay members leave, as council members leave, we need to have a plan in place on the path that we want to follow. And Councillor Smith, I'm not sure if there's anything to add to all of that.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. No, I think you pretty much covered it. It seems to be that time of year when we're doing some evaluating all the way from the top down to the board members, and so we're just doing our due diligence right now. That's it.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Landry.
If I may also add, as I think we mentioned last meeting, we are going ahead with a strat plan with the library, and I believe in this coming month we're having roundtables with some of our stakeholders, and then the board, we're going to be sitting, I believe, in April, and we're moving forward with that as well. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you for your reports. The Police Services Board, Councillor Wirt, do you want to take this?
Through you, Madam Chair, excuse me, the next meeting, I believe, is next week, and I don't think we've had much activity, even though the police have been front and center in every newspaper that we've looked at in the course of the last month or so, but on our perspective, very quiet. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that. Oh gosh, now his name's gone right out of my head. Mark Hemrick, Inspector Mark Hemrick, has been very good at keeping me up to date with the moving around of OPP officers during this last bit in Ottawa. And he called me up a couple of weeks ago and he said that they'd been asked to actually send some officers to Ottawa and to support the effort. But he wanted to assure me and assure the people of Sdng that Sdng would still be fully covered and everyone would be safe and sound. And I really appreciated the update from him. He's a very good communicator, that's for sure. I think we're lucky to have him. Glenstart Lodge, Councillor Bivalds.
Thank you, Warden. We did have a meeting last Thursday. We had an update on the outbreak. As many of you know, there was a COVID outbreak at Glenstart Lodge, and just to give you a perspective of how big a COVID outbreak can go, it had 38 residents and 66 employees. So as much as we think we're over the hill, it's when you're in a confined space like this, over the hill is real hard to get to. So as much as many have been vaccinated up to 4 times, it's still a challenge, but they've been working through it. We've given them a lot of credit from the Board of Management. They've hired a few new people. Mr. Andre Turbine, he was former Deputy Chief of the EMS in Cornwall, and he's now the new Program Manager for Quality Improvement and Risk Management. So very important job now with the way we're going forward. And they also hired Ms. Jacqueline Dorval as their Deputy Administrative Director of Care. Human resources is a big challenge at many LTCs now. It's not only at the top, but also at not so-called bottom, but the people who actually have to do the work hands-on. It's, as we all know, it's a challenging position and not a lot of dollars involved, but the administrator, Stephen Golden's working well, and he's done a good job, but up to now, we as a committee are happy with what's going on, as much as it's been challenging, and we hope to continue forward. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. I got ahead of myself there. Eastern Ontario Health Unit, Councillor Gardner.
Thanks, Warden. As everyone can imagine, the COVID continues to monopolize the majority of the discussion at the health unit. As we transition into the next phases, there does definitely seem to be some optimism that we will be able to eventually get out of the pandemic. We did also cover some of the going-ons, as the warden had mentioned, with different demonstrations and how they may or may not impact the area. And I think that was it, right, Warden Williams? I think that was pretty much it.
Thank you for your report. Cornwall and Area Housing, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Since January of this year, the CHC has been dissolved and is merged with the City of Cornwall. However, Councillor Wirt and myself are still on standby because there's some closed information that needs to be taken care of before it can be officially dissolved. So we're just on standby until that is cleared up. Other than that, we are no longer needed. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. St. Lawrence River Institute, Councillor Gardner.
Nothing to report, Madam Warden.
Thank you. Raisin South Nation Source Water Protection, we haven't had a meeting. Municipal Advisory Algonquin Land Claim.
Nothing to report, Madam Warden.
Nothing to report. Thank you. Eastern Ontario Agri-Food Network, currently the strategic plan that I've been talking about has been completed, and now the organization is figuring out how to implement this strategic plan. I will report as we move along. The Regional Emergency Response Council, I missed the last meeting, so I don't have anything to report on that. So that's the end of our boards and committees. On to key information reports. 11.1, Education Symposium. Tim, do you want to start? And then I think Councillor Gardner will have a few comments.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and just there's statistics and whatnot there. Councillor Gardner and I had a chat before the meeting, so I'll turn it over to her to roll through kind of where we were and where we're going to go. So, Councillor Gardner, thank you.
Thank you. So we had the Education Symposium. I hope that folks were able to participate. There are some stats in here, but one thing to note is the symposium was recorded, and we definitely feel that it will be a reference tool moving forward. Great discussion. The presenters were fabulous. And lots of information and lots of new information came to bear, different perspectives and stuff. So it's actually going to add to the plan moving forward. The committee did have a debrief session to go over the symposium and what worked. There's a great list. Not too much we felt that didn't work. Definitely a more targeted approach with the information we got from the symposium. We are now ready to look at next steps. So a plan is being prepared, will be presented to council in the, I would say shortly, in the next meeting. And we want to capitalize on the momentum the discussion started. I think the one takeaway was that it's not just an Sdng issue, it's a rural issue across the province. That was absolutely validated, and you know, you can look at Canada, and any of the rural areas have had challenges making sure that the equity is there for their rural families. So it was a fabulous day. It's still online if you have a chance. I would definitely ask that you watch it. We will be asking other, we will be circulating it as we move forward, and I think it's going to be a good, it's not a start. I mean, the report was a start for us, but it definitely will help us transition into action.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor McDonald.
Yes, thank you, Madam Warden. Just wanted to congratulate Stephanie and Kirsten for the hard work that they did do, and we did have a committee as well, but they really put a lot of work into this, and their presentations were were excellent, and I thought the day was excellent. It really pointed out what we've been kind of fighting for, and really validated kind of the work that's come up to this point. So I'm hoping that we can move this forward, and I have some, Stephanie is unable to be here at this point, so she just left me an email from the working group meeting. I thought these were the next steps to ask to council so as to capitalize on the momentum, is ask council to approve development of terms of reference for a standing committee, doing a proactive communication campaign that shares presentations and links with rural municipalities, an important tool for any municipality in the future faced with proposed school closures, capitalize on media's interest by creating a next steps plan with Dr. Bennett, would need some funds and therefore council support. So I just wanted to pass that forward from Councillor Jaworski.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McDonald. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and I echo Councillor McDonald's thoughts on as extending congratulations and thanks to Councillor Jaworski and Councillor Gardner for their efforts. I did have a comment during the debrief, a positive comment, and there's many positive thoughts. This symposium and being organized, I'd like to thank staff as well for making sure it was organized in such a fashion. It really, it was a showcase for SDG. It was a showcase for demonstrating the initiative and the thoughtfulness that was expressed by many on the committee, especially, as I mentioned, Councillors Gardner and Jaworski. It brought us, and it's an opportunity to bring us to the forefront in this effort, and it did something that I echo in my own municipality, and Deputy Councillor Armstrong has heard me say before. It makes other municipalities wonder and think highly of the efforts that are going on here in SDG in support of rural education and to other efforts. And I was very proud of the end product. I can't express it enough. It highlighted the quality of representation in SDG, and thanks to all those involved.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Are there any other comments? I would like to concur with the congratulatory comments to Councillor Gardner and Councillor Jaworski. You did a fabulous job in your presentation, and I know it was a lot of work. There was also it was also a lot of work for some of the staff members who sort of put their heads together and got the technology all organized. Tim, Todd, Mike, Kimberly, and Ron Brennan stepped in. That Stephanie Jaworski's husband stepped in to volunteer his time to do some of the technical aspects as well. So thank you to staff for all of your hard work on this as well. Now, just a question, Tim. Will this will be coming back to Councillor Jaworski's email that Councillor McDonald just read. Will that be coming back in the form of sort of a formal report?
Thank you for the question, Madam. Yes, as Councillor Gardner mentioned and Councillor McDonald, we're working with the education working group to come up with a plan that we hope to present probably in March with next steps, costs, and some detail that Council can debate and help us move forward with. Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. Great. On to 11.2 SDG Historic Tour Update. Todd, do you want to speak to that?
Good morning, Council, and good morning, Warden Williams. The report is fairly self-explanatory. In a nutshell, the progress on the project is going along quite well. We've completed presentations now with each of the local township councils. We've also started having conversations with local history experts and local historical societies, and we're getting to the point now where we're going to start coming up with some specific ideas concerning content as well as locations, and that process starts as early as tomorrow. I've got a meeting in Alexandria to discuss the Glengarry County plaques. So things are going well. We're on time, we're on budget, and we anticipate having the plaques completed before end of the year, and then we'll have them installed spring next year.
Excellent. Thank you, Todd. Anybody have any questions or comments? Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, and thanks to Todd and all his efforts and in organizing the meetings. I was involved in some of the meetings in North Dundas, and I'm sure the meetings that went on elsewhere in Sdng were just as exciting. And speaking of the excitement, I know, speaking from our meetings, this project, I think it'll have legs. I think there's an opportunity for this to continue, and I think this is something that council should consider hard with great thought about ensuring that we capture these stories, we capture these vignettes of history, and ensure that people are aware of that. It serves not only the residents of SDG, but it serves those outside of SDG well. There are many people that are interested in the history of this area, and I think this is a great project moving forward, and I look forward to a continuation of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Okay, so on to 11.3, draft roadside signage policy. Ben, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And good afternoon, morning. Still morning, yep. Going through the draft roadside signage policy, you may recall we talked about this at a previous committee of a whole meeting, and as we're getting ready for the work we need to do this summer, of course, one of the things we've got to finalize is just get this policy finalized so our staff have some good direction. We can move forward with installing some signage and making sure signage respects the policy. So there was two, I guess what I'm going to start with, there's kind of two outstanding questions that were to be resolved with the roadside signage policy. The first one, and unfortunately I think Councillor Jaworski has dropped off the meeting. She had thrown this idea into the pond, was looking at rebranding some of the signage. So we've done a little bit more research. We do note that the OTM does indicate that these kind of road names, road identification signs should be green with white lettering. That's a should, it's not a shall. So there is some discretion with respect to these signs. One thing I do want to point out is that we do have an inventory of these signs. So there is, if we do start to kind of change and turn away from kind of, I guess, the standardized signage, there is an inventory that is essentially a loss, unless we can find other counties that we can sell them to. Particularly the road, we have blade signs just like that with County Road 17 that are in stock, ready to go. So our recommendation on this one is really to maintain the existing signage design. It's standard. It's probably what most people would expect out there. But that being said, I'm an engineer, not a brander or an artist. So I respect there is some discretion here that council can give some direction on. So I guess with that, is there maybe throw it back to council, is there a desire to change that branding of street identification signage, or are we comfortable kind of leaving it the way it is?
Can we switch the blue sign at the bottom? No?
Yeah. He's paying me for this.
Yeah. He's deliberately trying to confuse everybody. So is there any great desire to, Ben's just asking if there's any great desire to make any changes here, since somebody had brought it up previously. So that's what's, okay. Seeing none. All right, thank you, Ben. Go ahead on to the next one.
And thank you. And just for context too, I do have this, I do have the draft policy that council would have looked at. It does kind of spell out the green with the white lettering, and that's why I wanted to make sure while it's still in draft stage. So I'll maintain the draft policy as it is. The other outstanding issue, and we somewhat talked about it, but I do want to return back to this concept again, is looking at whenever we talk about and we'll call them fingerboards, that's what we what we call them internally. But really what it is, it's an advanced street name sign. There's what we do have right now, and again, not consistent, but we did hear from council that there is a desire to provide that consistency, which is our intent through this policy of those advanced name signs. An alternative to having it as a separate sign is to have what we call as a tab under the intersection ahead sign. From a cost perspective, it's really probably not that much different. We haven't done a full detailed analysis, but we do not have those advanced intersection signs everywhere, so we would have to install those to be able to put the tabs on them. They are in various locations throughout Sdngs, and then if that's the direction we take, we also have to slowly remove the other ones too. So from a cost perspective, one to the other, from capital cost, not a big difference. From an ongoing maintenance cost, it is 2 less posts that we would have to mow around, trim around if we went with the tab on the intersection ahead. The other thing I do want to note about the tab with the intersection ahead, that is an official warning sign per the OTM. There's nothing that says you are allowed to put a tab like that underneath it, so it does introduce an element of liability that it is my job to point out to council. This screenshot is taken from Lanark County, so if you ever drive in the Lanark County area, that's the standard they've adopted. From a risk perspective, if you tell me, like I would strongly suggest that there's very low liability associated with tabbing the name of the street underneath the intersection ahead sign. But it is there, and it is my job to let council know of that, because if something happens and it comes back on us, they could point to, whoever has experienced the accident could point to that as a contributing factor. Whether that's true or not is another story. But this is really just kind of I would call it more of an aesthetic. Is there a preference one way or the other? Again, from the maintenance side of things, a little bit easier if we do it tabbed on the intersection ahead, but ultimately it's council's call whether they want to kind of keep that consistency with the street name signs the way they currently are right now and intend to be expanded throughout the county.
Thank you, Ben. Go ahead, Councillor Bivalds.
Thank you, Warden. Glad you asked. I guess this all started when the green and white signs started disappearing, and I think council decided to go back to it, and I appreciate that. If you're asking me, I think I'm a traditionalist. I like what is on the left, the green and white. I understand that there is some potential cost saving on the other side, but it also you're kind of do 2 jobs with 1 stone. Sometimes that doesn't work very well. You can put more onto the other sign if necessary for temporary purposes, and from my point of view, I think that's the direction I think we should go. Thank you.
Okay, so we have someone who likes the green and white, Councillor Bivalds, Councillor Fraser, then Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I as well appreciate the green and white more. Not so much I appreciate it more, I misspoke. I'd rather the green and white. Whenever Mr. DeHaan mentions any potential liability that may be incurred by not paying attention to the OTM, that causes me concern. I'd rather see the green and white. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep, okay. Am I seeing a nod of heads that the green and white is the way to go? Yes. Okay, I think you have your answer.
Thank you. Good. And so what I'll do right now, just very quickly, I'll breeze through some of the policy highlights. Again, the draft policy is included in the council agenda, and my intention is to come back at the March meeting with the final, just based on the input I've got. I can now finalize it. And subject to any other discussion council wants to have on it, and I do have my pen in case there is some more points. So from the regulatory and warning sign, what's in the policy, we do state that it is installed per the OTM and or the MUTCD, which is the Municipal, the Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and that's really the default when OTM standards not available or does not apply. One thing that is, I think, going to be welcomed by the local municipalities Not that there's a whole heck a lot of them, but we are taking responsibility, or through this policy, we will take responsibility for all warning signs in the right-of-way, even if the local road conditions necessitates their installation on the county road. And the perfect example of that is in North Stormont, the railroad crossing signs, which are on the side road. So you come off 43, and you'll essentially hit a railroad crossing within, I'm going to say, 100 meters of the intersection. Those signs are actually installed in the county right-of-way. How they had been installed is that North Stormont had installed them. They had consulted us. We said, yeah, no problem, and it was all good. But what we're going to do is, in the future, that's our sign now, and we'll take responsibility for it, and we'll just rely on the local municipality to advise us if changes are needed or if different signs are warranted. The other thing that we've made clear in the policy is that we're saying that if the warrant indicates it should be installed, we will install it. So again, that's a little bit more on the liability side of things, back to what Councillor Fraser had mentioned. There is instances where it's not necessarily a strict yes, but rather it's a good idea. So we'll take, and for the most part we will take but this policy says we're going to take the position that if it's you probably should do it, we are going to do it. So those signs will be installed. So I'm not going to change a whole heck of a lot in terms of where we've installed sign, but there are some instances where signs would have been installed where they wouldn't have been prior to this policy passing. The other thing I want to note is that there is some regulations and some municipal, or excuse me, provincial laws associated with how quickly we have to replace warning and regulatory signs. So I do kind of just restate essentially in that policy that things that are not in compliance will be addressed in accordance with legislation or as soon as practical to do so. And then that's regulatory signs. So regulatory is your speed limits, your stop signs, all those things that are really important for traffic safety. Warning signs like a curve sign, intersection ahead sign, a bus stop ahead sign, when they're not in compliance with the policy, we're going to address them in accordance with legislation if there is legislation associated with that warning sign, or in due course at an economical time of choosing by staff, taking into account the risk to the traveling public. So, and the two examples, very quick examples, the curve signs that you see, a curve ahead sign, if those get knocked over, we have to respond in a certain amount of time according to the law. But a school bus ahead sign, if you know, it's not warranted anymore because the child is now in university, you know, we're not going to go out there and take it down tomorrow. We're going to take it down at a time that it makes sense for us to take it down. So that's the difference between the two and how we're going to interpret that.
Thank you, Ben. Councillor Byvels.
Thank you, Warden. Since you brought that up, because I had a little stick-up on that, would it be fair to say that you need to have kind of a timeline in mind, though? Because I know how everybody works, including myself, that you get used to something, oh, well, we'll get to it, we'll get to it, we'll get to it, and it never gets done. And that would be my concern, because people say, well, there's sign up, we have to be aware of it, and technically they don't have to be.
Yeah, a point well taken, and I think really what this policy is going to do is give us a good opportunity to reset ourselves out there, and I think a lot of these things are going to be identified, and a lot of times it's, you know, if we have to install a sign, and we need, for example, a backhoe to install a sign, and it's, you know, a school bus ahead sign for, I'm just using very general things here. You know, we're not going to do a 3-hour call out for that backhoe just to install one sign. We're going to do it whenever we're working with a backhoe here, here, here. Now drive over here, let's do this sign. So your point's well taken, and I don't think it's going to mean that we're going to let things lag forever, but rather that's the classic example of how we use our time efficiently to try and address these things based on the risk to the traveling public. I hope, does that answer the question? Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this? We're good to go. Thank you very much, Ben.
Good. Okay, I'll continue on. So the other pieces that this policy speaks to is guide and information signs. So another, I think, welcome change that we'll communicate out to the local municipalities once done is we'll take responsibility for essentially all signage in the right-of-way because there are instances where local municipalities do have some responsibility for signage. And if I'm being honest, like, you know, I know our guys out in the field have a good handle on it, but sometimes it can get confusing, and for us, I think we just need to wipe the slate clean and say, this is us, it's our intersection, our roadways, we'll take the responsibility for it. So we're taking responsibility for blade signs. Again, the style, we're defining the green and white, and we're noting that they'll be installed and replaced as soon as practical. And where that comes into play is when we talk about the wayfindings, or excuse me, the fingerboard signs. Route marker signs, those are the triangular ones that just have, they're white, they have the black lettering with the county road number on it. We locate, or we note in the policy where those are going to be located, and we also note, and this is just one of those quirks of, you know, think of County Road 18, there's a couple sections where it actually is broken along its route. How we actually are going to sign County Road 18 and, for example, County Road 14 through Osnabrück Center. Like both 18 kind of continues north on 14 to get over back to 18. So we've kind of clearly demarked how we're going to note those things where we have broken sections of county roads. Advanced street name signs, so those are those fingerboards. We identify in the policy they're located in advance of each intersection where the speed limit through the intersection is 70 kilometers per hour or greater. So that's going to take it away from our urban areas. So we're not installing them in urban areas. I want to make sure that's clear. And if, again, council has different thoughts on that, then please let us know. But really for us, we feel that this makes a lot of sense, just given you're in a lower speed urban environment where you're not trying to reduce the amount of signage within the right of way, and kind of keep it so that people can watch the roadway, pay more attention to things like pedestrians, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We identify the location. The other thing, because this is a supplementary sign to the street name signs, which are under the blade signs, what we're saying is we install and replace them in due course when the budget permits. So I guess what I'm getting at there, and practically how this will work, is of course if one gets knocked over, we're going to replace it at a time that makes sense to replace it. But of course, because this is a new policy for us and we're actually going to be introducing these across the county, we do have a capital budget that council's approved this year. So we're going to, spend that money this year, but the reality is we're probably not going to get it all done. So I just want to make sure the expectations are clear with respect to how quickly all of these fingerboard signs are going to get up across Sdng. Our expectation is going to take 2 or 3 years to really get there, and we're going to experiment with a couple different ways to make it as efficiently as possible this year. Last thing for guide and information signs as well is wayfinding signs. So those are those signs that you'll see in advance of an intersection that says, go this way Chesterville, this way Winchester, etc. We're noting that we're going to put the next major settlement area or major arterial road on those because there are some instances where we have used those in lieu of advanced street name signs, so we'll clean those up. And again, we'll determine what's displayed, consult with a local municipality if unsure, and if we have a question from a local municipality or a request from a local municipality, we'll work with them to change the sign, and those, again, installed, replaced as soon as practical. Public information signs, so those are signs like Jake Breaks, Children at Play. We're identifying that those are installed by the local municipalities, and we'll work with the local municipality to have those installed in the county right of way. When we get to enhanced guide or information signage, so a great example of that is Altway, I think I've got that right, the Altway designation in Winchester along County Road 3. That's an example where the local municipality has taken, they do have relatively nice enhanced signage there, but there is, we still want to make sure that county road numbers are identified, but they've gone ahead and changed those signs to a very attractive kind of different look compared to your standard signs. So what we're saying here is we have no issue with that kind of installation if local municipalities in their villages, hamlets, whatnot, want to go ahead and install enhanced signage. Another example is in Avonmore, the lit street signs. That's a little different. We've left that with the local municipality if they want to keep doing those kinds of things. And last but not least in this policy, if something doesn't conform to this policy, we'll come back to council and get council's approval.
Great, thank you for that, Ben. Any comments or questions? Okay, so that's great. Thank you for your report. So this will come back as a formal policy next meeting. Thank you. Okay, on to 11.4, mobile food offerings at the Summertown Forest. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. So we had a delegation from Miss Lucy Shaver at our last meeting to talk about operating a food and drink venue at Summertown Forest. The direction we got from council at the time was to have staff meet with Miss Fraser, talk about it, and come back for future consideration and direction. I can report we did, I met with Miss Fraser in the Township of South Glengarry to talk about some of the regulations that impact mobile food operations. Some of those takeaways were essentially that if Ms. Shaver was considering operating a food truck, a classic food truck, the zoning of Summertown Forest doesn't allow it, so there is some challenges there for her to be able to do that there. We did talk about some adjacent properties to the forest where the zoning was more permissive for that. Those are not county-owned properties. If that was something that was, Ms. Shaver wanted to consider, we encouraged her to kind of dialogue with some of those private property owners if that's what she wanted, where she wanted to go. We talked about some exemptions under that bylaw and whether it's a special event, et cetera, and ultimately after those discussions, what we heard back from Ms. Shaver was that her preference is to operate more of a mobile canteen just on weekends rather than operating what we would again consider to be the traditional food truck. So the uncertainty around that type of operation is we're unsure what kind of permissions and permits were required from the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. So if it was just operating as a canteen rather than a food truck, where, what does the health unit, do they become involved? We weren't sure of that, so we encouraged her to reach out to them. There was discussion about she would prefer to have access to hydro now, and I realize this is probably a detail council doesn't know or is not aware of. During winter months, the Friends of the Summertown Forest actually pay for hydro fees because they are doing their drying of the rental equipment and whatnot and operating. Now it's the portable, but previously some of their other facilities that they had there. So the Friends actually look after hydro. So we essentially, to make it easier, we told Ms. Fraser her plans should not consider that there is hydro available if we do continue forward with that. I have got information from our insurer with respect to liability. There is a requirement for liability insurance if council does want to consider this. So I'll pass that along pending what the outcomes of this discussion are from council. Other things that I do note in this report, and I do want to bring to council's attention, is a couple. There are four different things. One is that the permitting. I guess one of the challenges that I think council's got to wrestle with on this one is, I'll reflect on Summertown Forest. The Friends of the Summertown Forest is a nonprofit organization, so they are raising funds through memberships and through rentals and whatnot to help buy the rentals and do the things that they're doing out there, and to me, they're doing a very good job. When we get into commercial type of work, that's generally something that we would put out and have, I guess, equal opportunity for all people to bid on. And the example that I'll take is maple syrup tapping. That was an RFI that went out, and we had respondents, and we went through that process to determine best value for the organization. So, I guess I commend Ms. Shaver for coming up with the idea. You want to encourage the entrepreneurial spirit, but I also recognize that there could be others out there that would say, well, what about me? Why can't I have this opportunity as well? And so I think there's some challenges around that I look for council's direction on. The other thing as well is that the Friends do offer, if you were out at the forest yesterday, you would have seen that there was hot chocolate and hot dogs and whatnot, and those are given away free for the most part, but there is an intention at some point once the portable is operational. Again, we're kind of at that transitionary stage. It'll be operational really next winter for the whole winter. But they are hopeful that they can offer, Keurig coffees and Keurig hot chocolates and prepackaged granola bars for people if they're coming in and renting. And as a little, not that this is going to be some kind of major revenue generator for them, but they do want to provide that. And so there is a concern there that there is some conflicting, I guess, types of sales, because that's, along the lines of what Ms. Shaver is thinking about with what she'd like to do as well. So I think that permitting a for-profit canteen in the parking lot. And again, this is not that this is creating huge profit for Ms. Shaver. I think it's a lot of it is of interest for her and you know, complements the work she does outside of this type of weekend work. But I do believe that there's some challenges there that council will have to consider. The other comment I want to bring forward is although I wasn't there yesterday, I was there on Sunday, and that parking lot was full, absolutely full. There was maybe room for 2 more cars when my wife and I pulled in to go for a cross-country ski. You know, having somebody set up permanently, whether Ms. Shaver or anybody else, I think is going to, again, put some pressure on that parking lot. And I have heard reports from the Friends that there is still spillover parking, although not as frequently and not as much as it used to be. It still is happening. We've been lucky so far as I understand, when that happens, we haven't been in the middle of winter operations, but one of our big things for expanding that parking lot was to try and get vehicles off the roadway. So I do think that establishing a mobile food operation within that parking lot will create some additional challenges as well. And then it was raised during the last meeting, and I think it is maybe more of a broader topic that council needs to weigh is you know, the commercialization of that forest and whether we want to go down that road, and if, you know, are we setting a precedent that we have to think about elsewhere. And again, like every situation is unique, but I heard that comment, and I respect that comment from council as well, that there is an element that we have to be aware of, is do we want to create this commercialization in a public forest? So with that, I'll look for council's direction on where we go from here.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Councillor Gardner, then Councillor McDonald, and Councillor Armstrong? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Gardner.
Thanks, Warden Williams. Thanks for the report, Ben. I think that anytime we have, and I appreciate the entrepreneurial spirit, exactly like you said. However, when we have a friends group that has put in the long hours, maintained momentum, and is actually the caretakers of a space like that, I think that we need to really make sure that any decision wouldn't impact them. And, you know, raising funds is hard enough as it is. Competing against a commercial establishment would just make things extremely more difficult than they actually have to be. So I appreciated your report. I definitely think that I don't agree that this is how we should go. I appreciate the idea, and I think it's fabulous when people approach us and take the time to do a presentation and everything, and definitely encourage that. But in this particular instance where there's an established friends group, I think we really need to defer to them and protect their activities. And the commercialization of something that's supposed to be natural and supported by volunteers and stuff like that, I think that's a pretty tricky way to walk. So I definitely would be in support of thanking Ms. Shaver or Mrs. Shaver for the presentation, but I think that's probably not a road that I'd like to go down.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, my comments are quite similar to Councillor Gardner's. Thanks for your very long report. You know, I think bottom line, the Friends of the Summertown Trails are the stewards of this forest, and you know, we should follow their advice and their recommendation. And if even if they're making a little bit of money off of selling some items on the weekend, then we should allow that to happen.
Thank you. Your comments, Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, well, just basically echoing what Councillor McDonald and Councillor Gardner just said. The only anecdotal offering that I would give you was we had a similar sort of situation, though not exactly apples to apples, throughout the course of Dairy Fest in Winchester. And as it grew, we started to have, it was essentially run by service clubs and some of the volunteer clubs for food provisions. And as it grew and got into its heyday, we started to allow other people to come in, some local restaurants bringing in food, and there was more variety, was sort of our thought. And I can tell you categorically, it never, ever, ever went over well with our service clubs whatsoever, because sort of to Councillor McDonald's point, if they were making $1,000 throughout Dairy Fest, if we brought in other competition and they made $990, it was still $10 that those people had to work for. And they felt some ownership to it, and I can't blame them, because they were the first ones there, and as it got better, we allowed other people in. It was a difficult choice because we had more and more people coming, so you did understand providing variety, but the people who were actually taking that money and putting it back into our community were the ones that were losing. It was generally the same amount of money, and it was just spread around differently. So it's no offense to Mrs. Shaver, but I think, as Councillor McDonald said, we have an established group there. We know how hard they work for pennies on the dollar sort of thing, and we should probably establish their ownership.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Smith. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Warden. I
Councillor
have to agree with Councillor Gardner and our other colleagues. I don't think there's a need to commercialize this area. There's going to be a lot of other things that would have to come with a chip wagon or a food truck, and that's going to be extended washrooms and extended cleanup and picnic tables and washing facilities. There's no need for that. We're going to kill the whole idea of this area. People are going there. They know what they're doing when they get there. I think they realize that they can pack a lunch, pack something that they're going to need, something to drink, something healthy to eat, and that's what they're there for. So I think they should prepare themselves before they get there, and there won't be a need for that either.
Thank you for your comments. I'm sorry I missed you, Councillor Fraser. Go ahead. No
apology necessary, Madam Warden. Just to add to some of the cautions, but I don't, it's seemingly unnecessary to add to the cautions, but I do want to express, as Mr. Hahn touched on, juggling what the volunteer group, and this is not strictly about the Friends group, but any volunteer group that supports any activity in our area, juggling the fundraising efforts that they may desire to have versus what a business has as a business, their efforts. We experience that in our arenas in North Dundas. Groups want to come in with cupcakes, brownies, squares, drinks, stuff for hockey teams, and we charge a rent to the canteen operators, and they need the revenue to support our need for rent. And then if we were to allow others to come in and hand out food or fundraise by distributing food, it takes away from the ability from a business to generate revenue, and that becomes a great concern. And how do you manage that? And the caution is, and the way we dealt with in North Dundas is the business has the right to say yes or no to food coming in besides the food that they distribute. And that's up to the business to make that decision. They can say yay or nay, and that causes hard feelings. Entering to an agreement like that would be unnecessary if we left it be and left the volunteer groups to do the fundraising and distribute food, or as Councillor Smith talks about, allowing people to plan ahead. And I think you're aware that I'm not in support of that effort from Mrs. Shaver. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'm getting the sense that the consensus is to not approve the request, unless anyone would like to speak in favor of it. Then I think you have your answer, Ben.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, motions and notice of motions. We have a motion.
Oh, Ben has one more report. I think Ben has one more KIR.
Oh,
yep.
The road tour. Pardon me.
Yeah, just I guess a question for council. We've historically held the road tour in April, mid-April. I know the Good Roads Conference is also in mid-April, so you might be sick of seeing me by that point, if not already. So the question is, do we want to have a spring road tour? Do we want to have a fall road tour? Do we want to have just defer it and kind of reconsider it later this summer?
Okay, Councillor Bivalds.
Thank you, Warden. In light that we had a tour last fall that worked out fairly well, and give us an idea of the upcoming projects and coming to the end of our term, I really don't see a need to have a tour here unless you see a very valid reason for a particular project or two. Having said that, though, you can give us a very good PowerPoint presentation on any project that's going on, and at this point, I just don't see a need for it. Now, that's from my point of view, but I think we all like going on tours. It's a good time to see what's out there. It makes us realize how big the county is, but I think most of us have been there, and I think you have perhaps maybe the only time I can think of a tour just came to my head is when you come up with our new 4-year plan and want to take us on a tour of that. Because we're going to have, we are supposed to approve that, though I have some reservations on that. That's the only caveat. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on this? Does everyone agree with Councillor Byveld's that we'll skip the spring tour? Does anyone feel it's necessary? Not. Okay, you have your answer on that one too. Thank you. Now we can move on to motions and notice of motions. Councillor Byveld had previously given a notice of motion, so please go ahead, Councillor Byvelds.
Thank you, Warden. As part of your package today, you see a motion that has been drafted by our clerk in regard to really an initiative started by Trustee McPherson at the Upper Canada District School Board. As many of you know, the school buses these days do have a stop arm on the left-hand side. The province has allowed for camera work to be on that side if necessary to capture drivers that do not stop. As much as this doesn't really, this is more a motion to get the wheels in motion. I need to know more information just like the rest of the county council has to. And that's why I'm asking staff to come back with a report and see what the process is and if there's any caveats or issues with it. That, you know, and not to bring the broken or the bad story to it, but when my son was, who is now older than I need to know, 37 or so, was going to senior K, he was in a bus that driver did not stop for one of his classmates, and that classmate was killed. So different circumstances now with stop arms, but anything we can do to slow these drivers down and make them aware or make them pay for an issue that they should be stopping for is something that I think we should at least look at, and then we can figure out if we need to support it or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Byvelds. So I guess if council is in favor, we will ask then that staff come back with a report. So is everyone in favor of bringing this forward? Is there anyone? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Kimberly.
Through you, did you want me? I can go ahead and read the motion, and it will require a seconder.
Okay.
So the motion reads, whereas legislation was put in place to allow for the legal and lawful use of stop sign cameras on school buses as of June 22nd, 2022, and whereas this valuable tool will serve as a means of enforcement of Ontario's Traffic Act as it applies to illegal passing of stop school buses, and whereas the trustees of the Upper Canada District School Board encourages that these systems be implemented within a timely fashion to enhance the safety of all school children on their journeys to and from school. Now therefore be it resolved that county staff be directed to report back with information on the process and proposed bylaw for the implementation of stop sign cameras on school buses in Sdng.
Okay, thank you, Kimberly. So a moved by Councillor Byveld, seconded by Councillor Gardner. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Byveld.
Thank you, Warden. One addition, and you're probably wondering why this comes to county council. My understanding of the law is that it needs to be enacted locally by either the upper tier or a single tier for a matter of enforcement, from my understanding. So I'll allow staff to figure that out, but that's why it's come to county council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Byvelds. Any other comments? Okay, you've heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Okay, thank you. Carried. Okay, moving along to number 14, miscellaneous business. Councillor Gardner is putting an item on the table. Go ahead, Councillor Gardner.
Thanks, Warden Williams. this discussion started before Christmas, and I was cornered on Saturday again about it. Tim Hortons in Iroquois. My request is with the high school across and Ross Video being built up, there's definitely some conflict with the pedestrian traffic that is crossing over to Tim Hortons, and the local residents and businesses are concerned that I guess there's been some close calls. I'm just wondering if staff would be okay to kind of have a look at it, see what the potential is if there is an issue. And I went with my local director of transportation. We did have a look at it, but if it's okay, it would be nice to study. And just a comment as well that maybe we need to look at when we have a business that attracts that many interactions, maybe we need to start charging them to put in that type of infrastructure, because it's going to cause some problems. And yeah, so.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, thanks, and I'll take that. I'm assuming there'll be some direction to go ahead and look at that, and we're happy to look at that. And if I'm not mistaken, we're actually looking at phase 2 of that development right now as well. It looks like they're expanding, cleaning up some of the other stuff on the other side. So it's a great opportunity to actually kind of look at it comprehensively. So perfect.
Okay, so thank you, Ben. You'll come back with a report at a future meeting. That sounds great. There's no unfinished business, so we will be going into closed session. So, Madam Clerk, if you can please read the motion to move into closed session.
It's moved by Councillor Wirt, seconded by Councillor McGillis, that council proceed in camera pursuant to Section 239 2B of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, human resources matter.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Carried. we're good to go? Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Fraser, that council rise and reconvene without reporting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So the ratification
All in favor
bylaw?
of that, though? Through you, just vote on the rise and reconvene first, please.
Oh, you want to vote, do you?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? Thank you. Carried. Ratification bylaw, please.
It's moved by Councillor Laundrie, seconded by Councillor McDonald, that bylaw number 5339, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Carried. And the adjournment resolution, please.
It's moved by Councillor McGillis, seconded by Councillor Byveld, that council adjourn to the call of the chair.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you, everybody, for your good comments today. Have a great rest of the week.